Well, we are back here with Elizabeth Roundy, who has quite the story. And Elizabeth's daughter is missing, and we're going to get to where maybe she is or how you can help find her. In our first part of our interview, Elizabeth, we talked about you growing up in the FLDS Church, being married, moving down to Utah, southern Utah, and we ended with the fact that you were told because you had a miscarriage that you needed to leave.
Yes.
And go repent. And you, one of your sons was also unclean.
Considered, yes.
Considered unclean. And so he was able to go with you, but you left. And did they give you any money? Did you have any money?
They gave me $4,000 to get started with once I got out wherever I ended up at.
And you had no clue where you were going?
No, I did not. I just knew I was supposed to go out through Wyoming and get some stuff that I'd left there on a job I had worked out there on, and then go out from there somewhere. My cousin came with me to try and help me get settled and started somewhere, and he's actually the one that suggested that Nebraska, and it just felt right to me, so we went to Nebraska.
So just imagine, if you're watching, being told today you have to leave your kids, you have to leave the community you knew and go. And you have $4,000 and you don't know where you're going. You did have a vehicle though.
Yes, it was kind of puttery on its last leg. It broke down. It stopped several times on our way out there.
So you're in this car that keeps breaking down. You don't know where you're going. You have one of your kids. You're worried for your other four.
Yes, worried sick.
The youngest is 2. You end up in Nebraska at a motel.
Yes.
And what happened from there?
The motel owner was a very nice person, and he kind of watched out for us for the first couple months we were there. He hired me to do laundry on the spot, gave me a job, and then he allowed me to stay in one of the rooms that they hadn't been using much for a fairly decent price, just to help me out. And then eventually we were able to move into an apartment.
But you did laundry there to earn
Yes.
money, and then you moved into an apartment. And how long were you in Nebraska?
For approximately 5.5 years.
5.5 years.
Yes.
You're homeschooling your son.
Yes.
And did you have any communication with your other kids?
Only one time
In 5 years?
in 5 years, and I only got to talk to my oldest son, Jonathan. And it was so good to talk to him. We ended up talking approximately 4 hours. He had to hang up twice, and he called me back. So I could tell he was just as happy to get to talk to me as I was to talk to him. And
So they missed you.
oh, yes. When I first got them back, then my eldest daughter couldn't look me in the eye without starting to cry. Just very dramatic and very hard on them as well. I can't even imagine.
Did you ever during that 5 years say, this isn't right? Like start to question your faith?
I don't know that I could say I actually questioned my faith, but I just wanted my children. I just kept feeling like it wasn't right to be away from them, and I needed my children, wanted them with me, and I was worried about them all the time. There was one time, I believe it was 2018. So when I was sent away, I was literally told by Lyle Jeffs, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, Don't know for sure, but you'll be invited back. So when we got there, we were just trying to do everything we knew we'd been told that we were supposed to do, which included staying off TV, internet, no watching the news, no reading the papers.
So you couldn't text your kids?
Oh, absolutely. No texting. It was not allowed.
Yeah. But you didn't know how long you'd be outcasts. You didn't know how long you'd...
No. When I first was sent away and left my children, I didn't think that I was going to be away for longer than that, maybe a couple months.
So you're just hoping all through these years that one day you'll get a call, you can come home.
Yes, and just working to be worthy to go back home to my children. And the only calls I ever got was them wanting money. They called me, I think, 4 different times and asked for donations of money. And that's all they asked for. And when they would call me, I'd say, hey, how are my children doing? I'm worried about them. Oh, they're doing wonderful. They'd always just tell me they're doing wonderful and just tell me whatever they wanted me to so I wouldn't worry about them.
Did you send money?
Yes, I did send money. All that I ever could. And the last time that they called and asked for money for donations, then I said, you know what, I have a couple $100, but I really don't have that much money right now. But I can send what I do have. And I never heard from them again after that. Not even one call, and that was approximately 2 years after I'd been sent away.
So 3 more years.
Yes.
Okay, so you're sent away in 2012 until 2017. Meanwhile, your husband's also been sent away to another place.
Yes.
And what happened in 2017 or 18?
So Nephi told me, well, that's my husband's name. He told me that he had received a call from an anonymous person who did not want me to know who they were. But they were concerned about my children. They said they had reason to believe my children were not in a loving home, loving situation. And I was worried sick. I was ready to climb in my car and drive home and check on them. But before I went to that extent, I decided I should try calling home and see if I could get a hold of anybody, and if anybody would talk to me and check on them. So I started making phone calls, and I was actually able to speak to my eldest son for, like I said, just a little while. We spoke one day, and he told me that he didn't know who would say such a thing, and that he was gone most of the time to work. At that time he was 17. But he told me that he didn't, as far as he knew, everything was great, and put my mind at ease a lot about their situation. But at that time I found out that they had not honored anything I had asked them to do, and that my children were not even with the same people I had left them with. Mm-hmm. And that was very disheartening and very worrisome to me. I specifically asked them to be with a certain person who I knew would be very patient and empathetic and very kind to them, and they were not left with that person.
So what did you do?
Well, I had talked to Nephi and told him that I kept feeling like we needed to go get our children, and he told me to not be jumping the gun because it was against the religion to go back and get your children without being invited or given permission to come back and get them. And if you did come back and get them, you're automatically considered an apostate. And I just got to the point where I was so worried about them, I decided it wasn't, I didn't care what they thought about me. I needed my children and I wanted my children back. And I determined I was going to do whatever it took to get my children back.
Elizabeth, was this happening with other families too?
Oh yes, many, many, many families. There's many mothers and some fathers from the group that are going through the exact same thing I am.
Yeah.
They put up a big fight trying to keep your children from you, and it's a very hard situation to be able to get your children back.
Okay, so you say, I'm going to go get my kids. Do you hop in the car and drive to Utah?
I actually did, yes. I left my son Benjamin, who was with me, the only one that was with me, in the care of one of my friends in Nebraska. She was keeping an eye on him. And I drove all the way from Nebraska by myself out to Parowan, Utah, the last known place where my children were. And I actually had a sister that met me there, and we drove around and looked all around Parowan trying to find any signs of FLDS people, children. Was hoping I'd see them out playing or something, and we couldn't find them anywhere.
Were you worried for your safety? Or at that point, did you care? You just wanted your kids?
I just wanted my children, yeah. I was anxious, but I don't remember being real concerned about my safety. It was more of my worry was more of whether they would give my children back or not. Because I knew from other stories I had heard that they put up a big fight to try and keep the children in the group.
So they weren't in Parowan?
They actually were in Parowan.
Oh, they were?
But I couldn't locate them that day, and I ended up calling law enforcement to try and to see if they would be willing to help me locate them. The cop I talked to, or the officer, told me if I were you, I would not show up on their doorstep, or it will blow up in your face. They had been dealing with so many cases like mine. The mother or the parent, one or sometimes both parents, would show up to get their children, and they wouldn't turn the children over to them. They'd make up some excuse, or the children would just vanish, just disappear. And so I had been warned not only by members of my family, but then the policeman told me that, and he said, don't show up or it'll blow up in your face. He said, in order for us to help you legally, you have to go through the courts and get a court order, and then we can legally do something to help you.
And that's what you did?
Yes.
So you get the court order, and you go, you're able to find out where they are.
Yes.
And you go with the police.
Yes.
And it's been 5 years since you've seen your kids. And what happens when you show up at that house?
I was told that I was not welcome to come into the house, and they took all my children. So when we very first showed up, they were not there. We had to wait for them to get home and come back. So when we came back, they were just, some of the children were still outside. In fact, I believe all of them might have been. I don't remember for sure, but I know I saw at least two of them going in the house. And one of them was still standing out there. And I walked up to my eldest daughter, Elintra, the one that's missing right now, and I said, "Hi, Elintra, it's good to see you." And she glared at me and said, "What in the hell are you doing here?"
How old was she? Like 13?
I think she was 13 at that time, yes. And I told...
And she knew you were her mom?
Oh, she definitely recognized
They all knew you were
yes.
the mom?
Well, Alan was only 2 when I left, my youngest.
He didn't, yeah.
So it's possible he didn't remember me.
She asked, what are you doing there?
Yes. And I told her, I came to get you. I said, do you remember when I left? I told you I would come back. I'm back, and I'm coming back to get you. And I don't remember if she said anything or just, I think she kind of gave me a dirty look and said something, but I don't remember what she said, and she turned around and walked in the house. And so the caretaker that they were with was gone at the time, gone to work. And so in order to serve her the papers, the child pickup order papers, we had to wait for her to get back. So they contacted her, let her know that we were there. So she came back, the policeman gave her the paper, and she was told that she needed to get the children out there to me. Instead of bringing the children out, she had told me I couldn't come in, and the policemen were knocking on the doors and they were trying to get him to bring the children out. And the next thing we knew, then she come out first of all, and she told me that they wanted me, just me, but no cops or anybody, to come in the house and talk to her. So I stepped in there, and there was approximately 8 to 10 adult FLDS people in there.
You're there alone, no police. They're all outside.
Yeah, and I'm still dressed the same as they are.
Sure.
I still considered myself FLDS.
I remember, yeah.
I just wanted my children. I was trying to be peaceful and go about it in the kind, loving manner and still be a good person, but I wanted my children. And I stepped in there, and they all started telling me, why are you doing this? You know, the prophet's going to be delivered.
They thought Warren Jeffs was going to get out of jail.
Yeah, you shouldn't be doing this. You need to leave this alone and go repent. You know this isn't right. And they were just trying to make me feel guilty for coming back to get my children. And my oldest son was even part of that, because they have you so brainwashed and in this form of belief that you can't even see past it unless you get out of the situation for a while. And then you look back and you're just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I actually even believed that way or thought that way.
Well, it's a good thing you stood firm.
I almost gave in to them, to tell you the truth. And I had my lawyer that had helped me to be able to get the order to have them, to pick them up, asked the police to have me come back outside. And he just talked to me and he says, you can't do this. You have a court order. If you don't honor this court order, if you give in to these guys and don't take your children right now, and don't honor this court order, you're going to lose your chance.
So how'd the kids finally get out?
So the next thing we knew, then she told us that the children hid. They hid themselves. And they didn't even assist them, she told us. And they didn't know where they were. And I says, well, will you please come help us find them? And she says, I will not help you find them. You're going to have to find them yourselves. And I felt uncomfortable. Here I am in a strange house. It's not my home. I didn't feel comfortable going through their home and rummaging and looking for my children. Mm-hmm. But she basically made us, if we wanted them, that's the way she made it. So me and one or two of the policemen started going through, looking in closets, looking under beds, looking for my children. And they, shortly after we started looking, then one of the policemen opened one of the hall cupboards, and my youngest, who was 8, I believe at the time, was in there. And they had him scared half to death of the policeman. He says, oh, there you are, and just picked him up and gently set him down on the floor, and he wet his pants. He was scared half to death. And it was so sad to me. Anyway, we were still looking for my 2 daughters, and we couldn't find them. And the cops actually went to the caretaker and they said, hey, look, why are you doing this to these children? Please don't do this to these children. We don't want to do this. If you don't cooperate with us and show us where the girls are and help us find them, we're going to have to call a whole bunch more cops in with dogs that can sniff them out. And they said, don't, please. I was standing there. They were begging these guys, please don't do this to these children. And they just stood staunch, refused to help or to tell us where they were. So they called in a bunch more cops, and it ended up being a very traumatic situation.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Just terrible for the children especially. And anyway, they finally located my 2 daughters, and they were stuffed up in I believe it was a kitchen cabinet that was way high. It was, I don't know how many feet up there. Way too tall for them to grab a hold and climb up themselves. They definitely had to have a ladder or something to get up there. And those guys had told us they didn't know where they were and they hadn't assisted them. So, meanwhile, my oldest son, the cops went to him and they said, look, these are your siblings. You need to help us. We have a court order here. You need to honor this. You need to help us get your siblings out in the vehicle. And my son was respectful, but he felt like it was so wrong to have them come with me that he said, I cannot do that. And the officer said, well, if you're going to resist helping, I'm going to have to put you in handcuffs. And that was really hard on me to sit and watch. Here's my son I haven't been around for 5 years, and they're putting him in handcuffs.
And he was 18?
Yeah, he was 18
So
at this
he's
time.
an adult. He didn't comply, but you had the other one who was in Nebraska, so you were there for the 3.
Yes.
So they get the 2 girls, they get your son, and did you basically just have to pick them up and put them in the car?
Yeah, the cops literally picked them up and put them in the car, in the truck, and they had another older sister there, and she was hanging on to the girls, and she wouldn't let the cops take the girls. So before we got them in the vehicle, their sister and their brother had both been in handcuffs because they wouldn't let us take them. And it was just, it was heartbreaking. It wasn't what I wanted. I was trying to just peacefully get my children and get them back. Just wanted them with me.
So where'd you go? You get them in the car?
We got them in the truck, and my brother had came with me to help me. And we drove back home here in Monteview, to Monteview, Idaho. Yeah, from Parowan.
Is that when you said, I'm done with this church?
That was definitely the beginning of me starting to question, starting to realize something is terribly wrong with this situation, because these are my children and they're fighting me. And I was actually told by some of the neighbors that they overheard those caretakers telling my children that I was wicked and evil. And they had been teaching my children that I was bad. At least that's what I was told. And the way my children acted after I got them, it all made sense, because that's the way they acted. And here I was thinking I was still faithful, but I just wanted my children. And then they all treated me so badly that it shocked me.
And you told me that over the course of the following months, the kids tried to run away or run around the property.
So the people that had them gave them a phone, and they were in contact with them. And they were telling them to be naughty. They told them, they kept running away. I had to literally follow them around because they headed right down the road and were heading up towards the highway. And I literally had to keep following them around everywhere they went to keep tabs on them because they kept trying to run away.
And put up cameras?
Yes, I did eventually put up cameras throughout most of my house. I mean, my kitchen, the main areas, not the bedrooms and bathrooms, but... And
so this was all in 2017?
No, I didn't actually go back to get them until 2020.
2020.
So when Nephi told me to back off, basically...
Oh, okay. 2017 is when you wanted to go. Nephi, your husband, said back off.
Yes.
And then in 2020, that's when you went to get them.
Yes.
In Utah.
So in 2019, in November, my father, who I had been estranged from for 20 years, passed away. And I wanted to be here for his funeral. I wanted to be here before he passed away, but I didn't dare. But then when he passed away, I actually called Nephi and said, Father died. I'm wondering if it's a good idea to go to his funeral. And he said, I think you should, which shocked me because I thought he was going to tell me no. And he says, do you have a ride? And I says, well, we'd been checking out airplane tickets because my father had left us with instructions that he did not want embalmed. He didn't want those chemicals in his body. He wanted us to just
bury him quickly.
take care of him as quick as possible.
You're still in Nebraska?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we had 24 hours
You had to get home.
to get home after I found out he had passed away. So they literally had his funeral the next day, and it's approximately a 16-and-a-half-hour drive from where I was living in Nebraska to where my family's farm is. So Nephi volunteered to come with me and help me drive.
You're still married, but you're living apart.
Yeah, we'd been separated for, since 2012. That's probably about 7.5 years at this time.
So he comes with you to the funeral, and how was the funeral? How was the reunion?
Oh, it was wonderful. I mean, I had, pardon me, I'd basically cut my family off, and they just all accepted me with open arms, and they were just all shocked but so happy to see me. And they were all so kind to me, and I was only there for a few hours, and Nephi made us leave. But at the same time, on our trip out, there'd been a lot of negative talk that Nephi had been talking to me, and I wasn't very happy at him, and then he made me leave without even getting to tell my mother goodbye. So that to me was the initial breaking point. Up to that point, I had thought, someday our family's going to get back together. I'll get back with my husband. And at that point, I thought, I don't need that in my life. I don't want that negativity. I'd been living around wonderful people in Nebraska that appreciated me for the good in me. And so I knew the difference, and I just, getting back around my family, my loving family, I thought, you know what? What in the world am I doing exiled out in Nebraska when I could be here with my loving family? And I had been worried sick about Benjamin. He was getting up in his teenage years, and he needed some good work. He needed
support,
interaction.
Yeah.
He needed support. He needed something. He was not doing good in the situation he was in. And on top of all that, I wanted my children back. So on my drive back home with Nephi back home to Nebraska, I had already decided I was moving back home. But you didn't tell him? No, on purpose, because I knew he'd try and stop me.
Yeah. So that's when you get to Nebraska, you pick up your son, and you moved to Monteview.
Yes.
And then from there is when you went to southern Utah to get the kids.
So when I first went to get them, I was still living in Nebraska.
Okay.
But they told me I had to get a lawyer.
Get the court order and all that.
So while that was going on is when I moved back to Idaho.
I see.
Yes.
So you go and get the kids 2020, and basically, to summarize, I guess you could say, your ex, I'm assuming he's your ex now.
Yes.
Legally.
We never were legally married because I was his second wife, and it was just a church marriage.
Okay, so it was never on paper, so you didn't need to file for divorce.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he fought for custody because you were granted custody.
Temporary custody.
Temporary custody of the 3 children.
Yes.
You already had Benjamin.
Yes.
So the 3 children. He then comes and fights for custody of those 3.
So he was living in Colorado at that time. When I went to pick the children up, they called him and used him basically as a pawn.
The FLDS.
The FLDS did, to come fight for my children to try and keep them in the church. And so we've been in court for 3 years now.
But you were granted full legal custody of these kids.
Yes, it's been a fight, and it's been pretty rough, but yes.
Yes, and in fact, we covered one of the hearings when someone said that Nephi was down at the courthouse and had signs.
Yes, correct.
Petitioning. He wanted these kids, but you have them. So just so we're clear, you legally have custody of these 3 kids.
Yes.
A lot of people think Elintra was fleeing from the LDS Church when she ran away a few weeks ago.
No, she was running back to the FLDS Church, and she had assistance from the FLDS Church, and it is my belief that they are hiding her somewhere. and that she's in what you could call the underground FLDS. And it just breaks my heart because she really had it pretty good at my place. She was going to public school. She had a lot of friends there. She has a lot of animals. She loves animals. It felt to me like she was coming along and doing pretty good out there.
And she'd been there for a year?
A year and a half.
A year and a half. So she was still communicating, as far as you know, with members of the church.
Yes, they wouldn't leave. They're not supposed to, by court order, they're not supposed to have any communication. But yeah, I would catch them trying to use phones, sneak and use their aunt's phone or somebody. And she admitted to taking my own phone and texting her brother that's still there.
So did she show any sign that you thought she might take off?
No.
You just woke up one morning and your car's gone?
Yes. And she had taken it New Year's Day, taken my car and ran away. And her father called me and told me she was at his home. And I told him she needs to come home, Nephi. And he just laughed out loud and said, she is home. And he told me that he believes in giving them, in not interfering and letting people do what they want, basically. I don't remember exact wording, and that he was not going to require her to come home. So here my 16-year-old daughter is. She doesn't have a license. She has had minimal experience driving on icy roads. She has a stolen car, and he didn't do anything to stop her. According to what he told me and the cops, he literally let her drive away from his home, and now she's just supposedly vanished, and nobody knows where she is, supposedly.
But they found your car at a gas station.
Yes, so she had left me a note saying, I'll get the car back to you. And then I got a letter in the mail telling me, your car is at such and such a place. And so the cops checked it out. It was there, so they had me come get it. So yes, I do have my car back, but my car's, yeah, I'm grateful, but I want my daughter back. I mean, she's far more important to me than the car.
There's a lot of talk out there that Warren Jeff's son, Helaman, is now running things. He's younger, in his 20s, I think.
Yes, that's what I've heard.
And are you worried that now that your daughter's back, they might try to marry her off or something?
I definitely have that concern. I feel like I've been trying to get her away from all this and protect her, and she's running back to it. And I'm very concerned because I've been told that there's more revelations from Warren Jeffs telling these certain caretakers to gather up all the young women to prepare them for marriage. And I don't know for sure, but I wonder if their father has assisted them in getting Elintra back to put her in this program to help him look good in the eyes of the church and the people. And I can't say that for sure, but it's my concern. And yes, I'm very concerned about where she'll end up if she doesn't come back home.
What do you want to say to Elintra if she's watching?
Elintra, I hope that you're watching this, and I want you to know that I love you with all your heart, and you are always, always welcome at my home. Please come home.
You have been through quite a bit, Elizabeth. And
Well,
I know it took courage to share your story, and I hope you feel good about it, because there will be people watching that this will help other women in your circumstance right now that don't know where to turn or where to go, and they can see if she did it, then I can do it.
that's my hope and my prayer. I know that I don't know. I'm nothing without the Lord's help. I'll say that.
Yeah, let me ask you that. So do you still, you don't follow the FLDS team? Do you consider yourself FLDS anymore?
No, definitely not.
But you still have a faith.
Yes.
So you still are praying and as you said, you're nothing without the Lord.
Yes, I have the same love for the gospel and the Lord that I've always had. That did not change, and I hope it never does. Yeah.
Do you foresee maybe getting married again one day?
Well, my children definitely come first.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, it has been on my mind.
Yeah.
Yes, if I could actually find a decent man that would treat me with respect and love me for who I am, then I would love to get married again. But
you're going to be the only wife.
yes.
You're not having another wife involved.
Definitely not at this point.
And are the other kids doing okay?
Well, I have to admit, I know it's been hard on all of us to have Elintra, they call her Ellie, to have Ellie disappear, run away like that. The two younger children especially, they've been with her for, not all the time, but most of those years that I was gone, and they've looked up to her, and she's been there for them, and now she's gone. And I've seen a little bit of, it hasn't been real bad, but some emotional, I can tell especially my youngest is missing her. So yes, it has affected us all.
I'm sorry you're going through this.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I hope that if she is watching, if those who have her are watching, will do the right thing, and that she'll be able to come home and stay home.
Me too. That's my hope.
If you have any information that can assist in finding Ellie, Elintra, contact the police wherever you're at. You can contact your local law enforcement, and hopefully they can get the tip they need.
I hope so too.
Thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome.